Kesenangan bermula dari perancangan yang bijak. Demi masa depan yang lebih bermakna, setiap gerak langkah harus dinilai. Bina simpanan asas persaraan anda di usia muda. Langkah pertama buat belia yang penuh impian. Impian adalah milik semua. Cabaran di hari ini adalah pemangkin kejayaan di masa hadapan. Diri anda adalah penasihat kewangan sendiri. Dengan mencarum melebihi kadar berkanun, anda boleh gandakan wang simpanan anda. Insan yang tidak pernah mengenal lelah sentiasa memberikan yang terbaik buat keluarga. Persaraan bukanlah penamat kehidupan. Ia adalah permulaan yang baharu. Pilihan di tangan anda.
Right, you're watching She Leads for Don't Go Broke in Your Golden Years. I've got panelists up on stage with me. Thank you so much for being here, ladies. A round of applause for our amazing ladies who've accomplished so much and who continue to do so much. Now, we're going to get right into it. How are all of you today? How are you doing, Faz?
Excited.
Excited? Much to share today?
Oh, yes.
Erin?
Alhamdulillah, very happy to see the crowd. Big ups to all of you for being here. Thank you. Talking about money can be a bit dry, so having this crowd just helps us.
That's
I
right.
believe.
Yeah. And Balqais, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you, Jessy. And I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks, everyone, for supporting us.
We're going to have a Q&A session as well towards the end, so do save your questions for then. Before I get into it, I'd like to actually read you some stats, and this is quite interesting. According to EPF, and do correct me if I'm wrong, 54% of EPF members aged 54 and above, that's in your golden years, have had less than 50,000 ringgit savings for retirement. And women make 63% of this group, so more than half, being the majority percentage there. As of 2022, women's life expectancy in Malaysia is 78 years compared to men who are at 73 years. So generally speaking, women, we live longer with lesser money. We also retire earlier from our lower paying jobs. So no good, we've got to change that, right? But the question is, why is this happening? Now, the World Bank in 2022, in its Global Financial Inclusion Index, revealed that in developing economies, there's still a 9 percentage point gender gap in account ownership. Fine, but this gap widens when it comes to financial knowledge. And a 2020 OECD study had found that women are 10% less likely than men to answer financial questions correctly, meaning to say our financial knowledge is perhaps not the most robust at this point. And so 30% of women globally are only confident of their retirement planning compared to 50% of men, which means that we are lacking behind. But the good news is financial literacy can be learned, and we can polish our skills in that. Without giving you more stats, which are important, I can do that later, I want us to all to wake up. This is a wake-up call. Let's turn the tide. Let's make that difference today. And so here we are with our panel. Now, first up, let me have this as an open question. Why is it crucial to start saving for retirement early? Why is it especially crucial for women? Balqais, maybe I'll start with you.
Thanks, Jessy. It's a great question. So I think it's mentioned by you. Number one is longer life expectancy. So for women globally, we do live between 5 to 10 years longer than men, depending on the stage of economic development as well as your lifestyle choices. But the human body, for instance, has the capacity to be living up to 90 years old, free of any disease. So we're technically throwing like 20 years on the table just because we are not being healthy, right? So for women especially, we tend to outlive men, maybe because we express ourselves better, right? We are women, the hands that rock the cradle rule the world, right? So we are there. So, but however, we are going to live longer and we do not have our spouse or significant other to support yourself because that person has, graduated in this life before you do. So then you need to think about it, So how are you going to live, into your twilight years without support? So it's very important because of women's life expectancy. We need to prepare for this. When you look at retirement, that's issue number one. But you always think that after you retire, you will need less money. Technically, it may or it may not be true. It depends on how you live your lifestyle choices. Your healthy life expectancy, maybe 10% is dependent on genes, good genes. 90% is from lifestyle choices. Do you exercise? Do you eat good food and all that? So with that thing, with aging is not only associated with cognitive decline, physical abilities decline is also associated with poverty, because your healthcare costs suddenly will take over the other cost components that you were spending on. So technically it will be after you retire or you stop being productive, it's like a U curve. First, you will still spend a lot, right? Because you want to go jet setting and you're still healthy. After that, you become a bit more, less active, so you don't need that much. But after that, you get the disease. So then your healthcare costs will start to burgeon. So it's very crucial to prepare for this eventuality. So that's issue number 2. And number 3 is the gender pay gap. For every 100 ringgit a man earns, a woman gets 66 ringgit. So we're underpaid. I'm not saying that it happens to all of us,
Right.
but many of us.
Okay, Fazlina, why is it important for women to save money? Thank you for that, Balqais.
Yeah. According to what Balqais has said, we tend to live longer, but are we living better? Yeah. So because of that motion that I always carry that with me, I think we need to make sure that we understand, we acknowledge that yes, we are, alhamdulillah, because with the technology these days, we are living longer, thanks to the medication, thanks to the medical technology. But the bigger question here is, are we living better, whether from financially, medically, and also your surroundings, right? So I was just sharing with Erin, nobody wants to talk about my topic, yeah? Because we all know, it's death is certain. It's not what if, it's when, right? So in preparation to that, right, we need to make sure that we plan, right? That is very important, because if you have that plan in place, whatever statistics that we have, we can narrow the gap. Yeah, so that will actually help us to move further, and also to make sure that we have something in hand to hold so that we can control ourselves.
Yeah, that's a sobering thought, because it's not if, but it's when. Tax and death is permanent. It will happen. It's a fact. Erin, why do you think you're someone who's of course young, but also you've already made that preparations and you're already in this line. Why do you think it's important to save for retirement?
Okay, I agree with Kak Balqais and Kak Faz notion. How long, I want to ask all of you, how long does it take for us to build a habit? How long? 14 days. 14 days. 14 days to have a solid habit. So imagine habits of saving money or investing. Imagine you starting only late 30s. Is it as easy to maintain in comparison to starting it at the age of 20? Of course it's easier when you start early. It's just the same as exercising. How many of us know people who have exercised when they were younger and they still continue exercise in comparison to people who are in their 30s who just started exercising? So habits build the most in behind the reasoning why we have to start investing. In my case, I was forced to invest and save by my mother. She's here, by the way, at the age of 18. At the age of 18. So doing this habitually is more important in comparison to having an objective. For example, retirement. I want to retire with this much money, this much investment, this much profits, this much dividends to continue living my life. So in comparison to having an objective, when we have habits, sometimes we invest and save because it's habitual. You don't need a reason to save or invest, which is even better than having a goal to invest. So in my opinion, just to summarize the question, all the answers that were given by Kak Balqais and Kak Faz, correct, but most importantly, doing it early enhances your ability to sustain your investment and savings habit.
So the starting point is by having that habit, by having that intention. Then that begs the question, where do I start? How much do I save? Where do I invest? Before we even get there, what would you say are some of the obstacles to women putting down money aside, whether for investment or for savings? We have to pay off debts, we have family responsibilities, the endless groceries, we've got lifestyle wants, we sometimes take a break from our work because we're starting a family and so on and so forth. What do you think, or from your perspective, what has been some of the challenges for women?
Traditionally, but I think now has changed. We depend on men. The independence wasn't there simply because I think the nature how it's being formed, right? But without realizing it, when you rely on someone, when you rely on something, you are stuck in a cage and you can't fly, right? And there's nothing wrong in getting yourself educated, in getting yourself finding more knowledge. And we are so blessed having Mr. Google these days, right, to help us to just find out what you want to know, right? It is all about empowering yourself with right information. Again, Google can mislead you to something else, right? And I think with education, with knowledge, you don't need to be a CEO, you don't need to be a career woman, you just need to be you. You just need to make sure, look at your surrounding, and what are the important things that you should know to make sure that you are able to handle the challenges, because life can throw you here and there. You're not going to be a static situation, especially when you're a wife, you're a mother, and with the aging population, we have to take care of our parents, right? So with all those roles comes with challenges, right? How do we navigate that if you don't have knowledge? So I think that's the key message that I would like to share today with everyone, because I think education is key for everything.
True. Right. We looked at the stats as well and see that majority of women are not investing or putting their savings aside in EPF as well. What has EPF seen as some of the obstacles or challenges for women setting aside savings for the future?
Number one issue, I think, is lack of income. So why lack of income? Women's participation in labor force is only 56%. And that's lower than many countries in ASEAN. If you look at trends, if you're more advanced economy, women's participation is higher. With participation in labor force, you get income. So when you have income, you can save. But when you look at middle income countries like Malaysia, the labor force participation for women is low, lower than less developed countries. And that is a trend that you see everywhere, because when you are in less developed country, you have women working in the informal sector. They become, entrepreneurs, they sell things or by the roadside and all that, and families need to elevate their income level. So the participation is higher. So in middle income countries, we find this trend. So we need to get more women into the labor force, because without income, it's hard to save unless you get your husband or a significant other to give you nafkah or give you something for you to be able to save. That's number one. Number two is the intermittent career breaks. And in other countries, you see this trend. So for women, when they become in their productive years, they first join after I graduate from high school or even go to university, I will go into the labor force. And then I get married. And then you drop out because you need to care for your children. So in other countries, after a period of being productive or reproductive years, women come back to work because there are incentives, there are policies in place looking at women's well-being. But in Malaysia, after you become, when I look at EPF data as well as the labor force data, after you reach 27 to 30, you start dropping out of the labor force and they don't come back. They call this a single hump. But in Malaysia, but in other countries, you have the double hump. So then they come back to work, and then women do not lose anything if you're living in Scandinavia, because that time taken to take care of your children is now being taken care in terms of your promotion, in terms of your career advancements. But it doesn't happen here. And in many countries, I just want to share this with you. In Germany, childcare is free. When women go back to work, the amount that they collect from the tax, more than enough to pay for free childcare. The United Kingdom did that in 2022, also free childcare. But in many Scandinavian countries, it's publicly managed childcare that is heavily subsidized. For instance, if I have to pay for childcare about 2,000 euros, I only pay 190 euros for that. So it's 90% subsidized by the government. So we need policies to encourage women, and it's not just looking at one part. For women to come back to work, there must be daycare centers for children, daycare centers for the elderly. So on average, a woman spends 4 hours, doing caring work, domestic work, compared to men, which is about 1.7 hours. So we are significantly disadvantaged. There must be policies that will support women in order to do all this, and we work together.
And that is so important, because that really pushes up what we're discussing today to a high level, where a lot more ears and eyes really need to look into this topic. And, we probably need ministers and prime ministers and more people at this discussion on a national level. Just wanted to bring up some stats here. A 2020 survey by AKPK found that 53% of Malaysian women reported, as what you highlighted earlier, they feel stressed about their financial situation, and they have significant concern about retirement planning because they are nurturers and caregivers. Erin, I'm coming to you right now, taking a leaf of what has been said in terms of obstacles for women to really look at their savings. How can also then we plan for unexpected life events? As you mentioned, it could take you here and there, even perhaps divorce, the death of a spouse, sudden illness. What do we do to ensure then that we have a secure retirement?
I grew up in a household where both my dad and my mom are in business. So my dad has a construction company. We've seen him fly. We've seen him at his peak. Obviously, income is also at his peak. We've also seen him go through some shortcomings, and that's when my mom's income fly. So I feel like when it comes to our household, there's absolutely no such thing as one person holding a stronger income, especially when they are in business. Back then, we see people in business having to go through phases. But now we see it happening amongst politicians. One day, your party is ruling, another day your party is not. And you're like, okay, what do I do now? And then you see that happening amongst engineers. I've had clients in oil and gas that one time when I meet them, they're super cash rich. Another day, they're not employed anymore, and they're depending on their wife's income, and their wives are just selling nasi lemak. But when there are issues or crises that happens, one person in the household will always be the stronger person to support another. So that's what I see growing up in my household with my mom and my dad. Issues like this happen. I also have some team members who has a group in AKPK, and most of them are bankrupt. Most of them are young, and the issues always go back to healthcare, just like Kak Balqais mentioned. Mak tak sihat, mother is unwell, no medical card, no access to fundings, cannot go to or depend on government hospitals. They have to fork out money for this one person. So I think when it comes to women, this is the mindset that we should have. It's always nice to have more money. If you don't want to work or you don't want to earn money or you don't want to do anything because I don't have to, my husband's around, must think at the same time, it's always nice to have more money. If it's not to support your husband, it's for you. And especially in this day and age where there are so many nice things. Nice tudungs, nice baju, nice makeup. Everything is nice. Agree with me, ladies?
Yes,
Agree?
nice
Agree?
places to travel and nice food to
Exactly.
eat and all that.
Yeah, correct. So I have a lot of friends who are constantly wanting new things because they see their friends having it, posting it on Instagram. So we are in this day and age where pressure doesn't come from what we want. Pressure comes from what we see amongst all of us. So if this becomes a reason why you have or go and work and earn more money, so be it.
Okay, so it's nice to have more money, but you mentioned earlier that if you have income, you can save. Here's the question: how? What if my income is not enough to save? And how then do we plan for retirement from that perspective to have the trust fund? And how does it work? Let's break it down. How? Fazlina.
Okay. Yes, I agree. Because women tend to have lesser income based on the statistic, but there was this story that I just read recently on Instagram, where the mother is she's a housewife. She takes care of 5 children, and every month the husband, the father, gives an X amount of money to run the household, and the children just found out that every time when the father gives that money to her, she puts some X amount of money aside for herself, right? And the thing is, when it comes to, this is the power of compounding, right? So fast forward 15 years later, when the children wanted to, of course, the children went for high school, studied and graduated. On the graduation day, of course, the mother was saying that they have 5 children. She said that one of the children said that, "Mom, I wish that we have enough funds to go." And the father is a public servant.